Ethan Sterling walked into the Grand Diamond Gala with a smirk on his face and a mistress on his arm, convinced he was the smartest man in the room. He had told his wife, Sophia, that he was working late, leaving her at home in her sweatpants to scrub the dishes. He thought Sophia was just a simple, boring housewife who knew nothing of his high society ambitions. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Ethan didn't know that the champagne he was drinking, the venue he was standing in, and the $50 million diamond collection everyone was whispering about all belonged to the woman he left at home. And tonight, she wasn't washing dishes. She was coming to collect a debt. The reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of the penthouse bedroom showed a man who believed he had conquered the world. Ethan Sterling adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, the fabric shimmering slightly under the recessed lighting. He turned his head, admiring the sharp jawline that had charmed investors and the cold blue eyes that he believed intimidated his rivals. At 32, Ethan was a mid-level executive at a logistics firm, but in his mind, he was a titan of industry waiting to be crowned. "Are you sure you have to go tonight?" The soft voice broke his concentration. Ethan didn't turn around. He watched through the mirror as Sophia, his wife of 4 years, entered the room. She was holding a basket of laundry, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an oversized grey t-shirt that had seen better days. She looked tired, plain. "Sophia, we've been over this," Ethan sighed, spraying a mist of Tom Ford Oud wood on his neck. "It's a networking event for the firm. Boring, stuffy, old men talking about supply chains. You'd hate it. Besides, you said you wanted to catch up on your reading." Sophia set the basket down. "I know, Ethan, it's our anniversary on Sunday. I thought maybe we could start the weekend early. Just the two of us." Ethan finally turned, flashing that practiced, patronizing smile he reserved just for her. He walked over and kissed her forehead, careful not to let his expensive suit touch her laundry basket. "I'm doing this for us, Sophie. For our future. I land this account with the Harrington Group tonight, and I'm looking at a VP spot. That means a summer house in the Hamptons. That means the life you deserve." Sophia looked down, her eyelashes fluttering. "I have the life I want, Ethan. I just want my husband." "Don't be needy," he snapped, his mask slipping for a fraction of a second before he smoothed it over. "I'll be late. Don't wait up." He grabbed his platinum Amex and his car keys off the dresser. He didn't notice the way Sophia's eyes lingered on the invitation peeking out of his inner pocket. It was embossed with silver leaf and featured a singular crest, a lion holding a diamond. As the heavy oak door slammed shut, the silence of the penthouse was deafening. Sophia stood there for a moment, the meek housewife demeanor evaporating from her posture like mist in the sun. She straightened her back. Her eyes, previously dull and submissive, sharpened into a gaze of terrified steel. She walked over to the window, watching Ethan's black Porsche Panamera peel out of the driveway. "Harrington Group," she whispered to the empty room. A small, cold smile touched her lips. "You're going to try to pitch to the Harrington Group? Good luck, Ethan." She pulled a phone from the pocket of her sweatpants. Not the cracked iPhone 11 she let Ethan see, but a sleek, encrypted Vertu device. She dialed a single number. "It's Sophia," she said, her voice commanding and crisp. "Prepare the car, and tell security to be on high alert. I'm coming to the gala, and I'm wearing the Midnight Star." Ethan's mood soared as he drove away from the suburbs and toward the glittering heart of the city. He loved the power of the Porsche, but he hated the anchor that was his domestic life. Sophia was safe. She was reliable. She was the woman who had supported him when he was a nobody, paying his rent while he finished his MBA. But now, Now she was just background noise. She didn't understand luxury. She didn't understand ambition. He pulled up to the curb of a luxury high-rise in the downtown district. A moment later, the passenger door opened, and the scent of Chanel No. 5, too much of it, filled the car. "Hey, baby," Chloe purred, sliding into the leather seat. Chloe Vane was everything Sophia wasn't. She was loud, she was flashy, and she was expensive. She wore a red dress that was cut aggressively low, clinging to her curves like a second skin. Her jewelry was gold and chunky, flashy, but if you knew what to look for, you could tell the diamonds were cubic zirconia. But Ethan didn't know what to look for. He just saw the shine. "You look incredible," Ethan said, placing a hand on her thigh as he merged back into traffic. "I better," Chloe laughed, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. "This dress cost a fortune. You're lucky I'm letting you show me off. So, where is this thing again?" "The Ritz?" "Better," Ethan said, puffing his chest out. "The Kensington Hall. It's the Diamond Gala, Chloe. Tickets are $5,000 a pop, the most exclusive event of the decade. Everyone who is anyone will be there. Elon's people, the Vanderbilts, the heirs to the LVMH fortune." "Kensington Hall?" Chloe wrinkled her nose. "Never heard of it." "That's because it's old money, babe. Real money. The Kensington family owns half the real estate in London and New York, but they're ghosts. No one sees them. Rumor has it the last surviving heir is a recluse. But tonight, they're opening the vault for charity." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was his arena. He was going to walk in there, dazzle the elites with his charm, introduce Chloe as his fiancée or business partner. He hadn't decided which lie was better yet, and close the deal of a lifetime. He didn't realize that the invitation in his pocket wasn't sent to him because of his business acumen. It was sent because the head of the guest list had been instructed to ensure Mr. Sterling had a front row seat to his own funeral. They arrived at the venue. The Kensington Hall was a fortress of limestone and marble, bathed in golden floodlights. A red carpet stretched up the massive steps, flanked by velvet ropes and stoic security guards wearing earpieces. Paparazzi were screaming names, flashbulbs popping like lightning storms. Ethan handed the keys to the valet, a young man who looked at the Porsche with a bored expression, having just parked 3 Rolls-Royces and a Bugatti. "Ready?" Ethan asked, offering his arm to Chloe. "Born ready," she grinned, adjusting her dress to show more leg. As they stepped onto the carpet, Ethan waited for the cameras to turn toward him. He paused, smiling, ready for the flash. But the cameras didn't flash. The photographers looked right through him, their lenses trained on an elderly couple behind him, the Duke and Duchess of Westminster. "Move along, sir," a security guard murmured, ushering Ethan forward. "You're blocking the entrance." Ethan's face flushed red. He grabbed Chloe's arm a little too tightly and hurried her inside. "Philistines," he muttered. "They don't know talent when they see it." "Oh, watch the merchandise," Chloe snapped, pulling her arm away. "It's fine, babe. Once we get inside, they'll all be looking at me." They passed through the massive mahogany doors and into the grand ballroom. If the outside was impressive, the inside was otherworldly. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling. The walls were draped in silk. A live orchestra played a haunting waltz from a balcony above. And everywhere there were diamonds. Women wore necklaces that could pay off the national debt of a small country. Ethan took a deep breath. "Okay, Chloe. Game face. We find Mr. Harrington, we charm him, and we leave legends." He didn't notice the eyes on them. He didn't notice the way the older matrons whispered behind their fans, or the way the tuxedoed waiters exchanged subtle glances as he walked by. They weren't admiring him. They were waiting. The atmosphere in the ballroom was thick with wealth. It was a tangible weight. Ethan grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray, handing one to Chloe, who immediately downed half of it. "Slow down," Ethan hissed. "We need to look refined." "It's an open bar, Ethan. Relax." She rolled her eyes. "So, where's this Harrington guy?" Ethan scanned the room. He spotted Marcus Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Logistics, standing near the ice sculpture. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair, talking to a group of serious-looking individuals. "Stay here," Ethan said. "Actually, no. Come with me. Just nod and smile." Ethan approached the circle, projecting confidence. "Mr. Harrington, wonderful evening, isn't it?" Marcus Harrington turned slowly. His eyes were cold, analyzing Ethan like a bug under a microscope. "And you are?" "Ethan Sterling. We exchanged emails regarding the logistics merger in the tri-state area. I represent Sterling & Co." "Ah," Harrington said, his tone flat. "The email sender." "I thought we could discuss the synergy between our firms," Ethan pressed, ignoring the dismissal in Harrington's tone. "This is my partner, Chloe." Chloe waved, holding her empty glass. "Hiya." Harrington looked at Chloe, then back at Ethan. A look of distinct distaste curled his lip. "Mr. Sterling, this is a charity gala for the preservation of historical arts. It is hardly the place to discuss synergy. Furthermore," Harrington paused, glancing at someone over Ethan's shoulder, "I was under the impression you were a family man. I believe your bio stated you were happily married to a—" "Sophia?" Ethan froze. The blood drained from his face. "Yes. Sophia couldn't make it. She's ill. Terrible flu. This is Chloe, my executive assistant." "Executive assistant," Harrington repeated, looking at Chloe's dress. "I see. Well, Mr. Sterling, I make it a policy never to do business with men who lack judgment. If you manage your personal life this sloppily, I can only imagine what you do with my supply chain." Harrington turned his back on Ethan, effectively ending the conversation. Ethan stood there, stunned. Humiliation burned in his chest. "Old dinosaur," he whispered to Chloe. "He doesn't know what he's missing." "He was rude," Chloe huffed. "Let's go find the food. I'm starving." Ethan dragged her toward the buffet, trying to salvage his ego. "Forget him. There are bigger fish here. Look, that's the CEO of Vander Woodson Tech." As they moved through the crowd, Ethan began to hear the whispers. At first, he thought they were just background noise, but the name kept coming up. "Is she coming?" "Heard the Heiress is making an appearance." The Kensington heir, wearing the midnight star. "Who is this Heiress everyone is talking about?" Chloe asked, picking at a lobster tail. "Some old lady, probably," Ethan dismissed, scanning the room for his next target. "The Kensington family hasn't been seen in public for years, probably rolling her out in a wheelchair to wave at the peasants." Suddenly the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The orchestra stopped playing. A hush fell over the crowd of 300 people. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase. The master of ceremonies, a man with a booming British accent, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "distinguished guests, it is my distinct honor to welcome the host of this evening, the chairwoman of the Kensington Foundation, the owner of this hall, and the sole heiress to the Kensington Diamond legacy." Ethan looked up, bored. He checked his watch. He was wondering if he could leave early and take Chloe to a club. "Please welcome," the voice boomed, "Mrs. Sophia Kensington Sterling." Ethan dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence. "Sophia?" He looked up at the top of the stairs. The woman standing there was not the woman he had left in sweatpants. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged a figure he had ignored for years. It was off the shoulder, elegant and regal. Her hair was cascading in Hollywood waves. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating fierce cheekbones. But it was what was around her neck that made the room gasp. The midnight star. A sapphire the size of a hen's egg, surrounded by 300 flawless white diamonds. A piece of jewelry worth more than Ethan would earn in 10 lifetimes. She stood tall, looking down at the crowd. Her eyes scanned the room, passing over billionaires and dukes, until they locked onto one specific spot near the buffet. She locked eyes with Ethan, and then she smiled. It wasn't a loving smile. It was the smile of a predator looking at a wounded gazelle. Ethan felt his knees buckle. "No," he whispered. That's impossible." Chloe looked up, squinting. "Hey, doesn't that look like your wife? But hot?" Ethan didn't think. He reacted. His brain was misfiring, unable to reconcile the image of the woman scrubbing his floors with the queen descending the marble staircase. It had to be a prank, a hallucination, or worse, she was spending his money to play dress-up. "Sophia!" Ethan barked, his voice cracking slightly. He shoved past a waiter holding a tray of caviar blinis. "Sophia, what the hell is this?" He started marching toward the staircase, his face twisted in a mix of confusion and rage. He expected the crowd to part for him. He was the husband, after all. He was the head of the household, but the crowd didn't part. They tightened. A wall of black tuxedos materialized in front of him. 3 men, each built like a linebacker, blocked his path. The man in the center was older, with a scar running through his eyebrow and an earpiece coiled like a snake behind his ear. This was Arthur Thorne, the head of Kensington Private Security, a man who used to run protection details for prime ministers. "Step aside," Ethan commanded, trying to summon his executive voice. "That is my wife." Arthur Thorne didn't blink. He looked down at Ethan with the kind of pity one might show a dog running into traffic. "Sir," Thorne said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Ethan's chest. "Please lower your voice. You are disturbing the guests." "Disturbing the— I'm her husband," Ethan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Sophia, who had reached the bottom of the stairs. She was currently accepting a kiss on the hand from the Duke of Westminster. She hadn't even glanced in Ethan's direction since that first smile. "Miss Kensington is not receiving personal inquiries at this time," Thorne said calmly. "Miss Kensington, her name is Mrs. Sterling." Ethan lunged forward, trying to push past Thorne. It was a mistake. In a blur of motion, Thorne caught Ethan's wrist. He didn't twist it. He simply held it with a grip like iron. The pressure was immense. Ethan gasped, his knees buckling slightly. "Let go of me!" Ethan squeaked. "Ethan, stop it!" Chloe hissed, appearing at his elbow. She looked terrified. She had been scanning the room and realized something Ethan hadn't. Everyone was staring at them with disgust. "You're making a scene. Let's just go." "I'm not going anywhere until she explains why she's wearing a necklace that costs more than our apartment," Ethan snarled, yanking his arm free. At that moment, Sophia turned. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She simply raised one elegant hand, and the entire ballroom, filled with 300 of the world's most powerful people, went silent. She walked toward Ethan. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor. Click, click, click. A countdown to destruction. She stopped 3 feet away from him. Up close, she looked even more radiant and more terrifying. The midnight star blazed at her throat. "Sophia," Ethan breathed, his anger suddenly replaced by confusion. "Babe, what is going on? Why didn't you tell me you knew these people? We can use this. Introduce me to Harrington properly." He reached out to touch her arm. Sophia took a half step back, avoiding his touch as if he were contagious. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of old money, not the tired whisper he was used to. "You seem confused. You told me you were going to a boring networking event for the firm. Yet here you are, at my gala." She shifted her gaze to Chloe. She looked the mistress up and down, analyzing the cheap fabric of her dress, the fake gold, the terrified expression. "And you brought a guest," Sophia noted dryly. "How charitable of you." She's my assistant," Ethan stammered, sweating profusely. Sophia laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that chilled the blood of everyone who heard it. "Oh, Ethan, you never were a good liar. Chloe Vane, 24, aspiring Instagram model, currently unemployed. You met her 3 months ago at the Sky Bar. You bought her that bracelet with our joint savings account. Transaction date, October 14th. The crowd gasped. Chloe's eyes went wide. "How do you know that?" "I know everything," Sophia said softly. "I own the bank you bank with, Ethan." Ethan felt the room spinning. You own the bank?" "I own the holding company that owns the bank," Sophia corrected effortlessly. "And the logistics firm you work for. Kensington Global Ventures just acquired a 51% controlling stake this morning." Ethan's jaw dropped. You're my boss?" "Technically," Sophia mused, tapping her chin with a manicured finger. "I'm your boss's boss's boss. And I have to say, looking at your quarterly performance reviews, I'm not impressed." She turned her back on him and walked toward the microphone on the stage. Ethan tried to follow, but Thorne stepped in his way again. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia said into the mic, her voice booming through the hall, "thank you for your patience. Tonight is about value. It is about recognizing what is precious and discarding what is fake." She looked directly at Ethan. "For 4 years I lived a lie. I pretended to be a woman of no means because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for the Kensington fortune. I wanted a partner who would build a life with me, brick by brick." She paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "Instead, I found a man who saw my simplicity as a weakness. A man who cheated, lied, and belittled me because he thought he was the prize. A man who brought his mistress to my house, to my event, thinking he was entering a world he could conquer." She gestured to the large screen behind her. Suddenly, a video began to play. It was footage from their penthouse living room. It was time-stamped 2 hours ago. It showed Ethan fixing his tie and sneering at Sophia's back. The audio was crystal clear. "I'm doing this for us, Sophie. Don't be needy." Then the video cut to the car ride, dash cam footage. "She's just background noise. She doesn't understand ambition." The crowd erupted in murmurs. "Disgraceful," Marcus Harrington whispered, loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Absolutely classless." Ethan stood frozen, watching his own arrogance played back on a 20-foot screen. He felt naked, stripped of every shred of dignity. "Tonight," Sophia continued, "I am making a donation. The Kensington Foundation is donating $50 million to the Women's Legal Defense Fund." Applause thundered through the room. "And," Sophia added, her eyes hardening, "I am also announcing a personal divestment. As of this moment, I have filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, captured in 4K resolution." She snapped her fingers. "Security, please remove the trash. It's beginning to smell. The grip of iron." The command hung in the air like the blade of a guillotine. "Security, please remove the trash." For a heartbeat, Ethan Sterling thought he could laugh it off. He thought he could turn to the crowd, flash his signature charming smile, the one that had closed deals and seduced mistresses, and play it off as a lover's quarrel. He opened his mouth to speak, to say something witty, to reclaim the narrative. But before a sound could leave his throat, the air was sucked out of his personal space. Arthur Thorne moved with a speed that belied his size. The head of Kensington Security didn't grab Ethan by the collar like a bar bouncer. That would have been too crude for an event of this caliber. Instead, Thorne utilized a pressure point grip on Ethan's upper arm, clamping down on the tricep with a force that sent a jolt of paralyzing electricity down to Ethan's fingertips. "Walk," Thorne whispered. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a statement of physics. "Get your hands off me," Ethan gasped, his voice shrill and cracking, betraying the terror rising in his chest. "Do you know who I am? I am the husband of the hostess. I am a VIP. "You are a trespasser," Thorne corrected, his voice a low rumble that only Ethan could hear. "And you are making a scene." Ethan tried to plant his feet, to make a stand, but two other security operatives, men with necks as thick as tree trunks and eyes devoid of empathy, flanked him instantly. They created a moving wall, propelling him backward. As he was forced away from the stage, Ethan looked frantically around the room. He sought eye contact. He looked for allies. He looked for the men he had been drinking with just 20 minutes ago. He locked eyes with Marcus Harrington, the man whose approval he had so desperate craved. Harrington held a crystal flute of champagne. As Ethan was dragged past him, Harrington didn't look away. He simply took a sip of his drink, raised an eyebrow, and turned his back. It was a dismissal more painful than a slap. Ethan scanned the faces of the elite, the heiresses, the tech moguls, the politicians. He expected to see outrage on his behalf. He expected someone to shout, "Stop! That's a man of dignity!" Instead, he saw amusement. He saw smartphones raised in the air, recording his demise. He saw women whispering behind their fans, their eyes dancing with the thrill of the scandal. He realized, with a sickening lurch of his stomach, that he wasn't a guest to them. He was the evening's entertainment. He was the court jester being fed to the lions. "Sophia!" Ethan screamed, twisting his neck back toward the staircase. "Sophia, stop this! We can talk about this at home. Don't do this to me!" Far away, at the top of the marble steps, Sophia Kensington didn't even flinch. She was laughing at something the Duke of Westminster had said, her hand resting lightly on her diamond necklace, the midnight star. She looked radiant, unbothered, and completely unreachable. She had already forgotten him. The gauntlet. They reached the massive double doors of the ballroom. Thorne shoved them open, and the noise of the party was instantly cut off, replaced by the sterile, echoing silence of the grand lobby. But the silence didn't last. The lobby was the holding pen for the press. The paparazzi who hadn't been allowed inside were waiting like sharks, sensing blood in the water. They had been bored all night, snapping photos of arrivals. They were hungry for a story. And then the doors flew open, and Ethan Sterling was ejected. It was as if a grenade went off. Pop, 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 pop. The flashbulbs exploded in a blinding stroboscope of white light. It was disorienting, nauseating. Ethan threw his hands up to shield his face, blinking rapidly, spots dancing in his vision. "Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling! Over here! Is it true your wife is the sole heir to the Kensington estate? Did you bring a mistress to the Diamond Gala? How long have you been cheating, Ethan? Look this way, cheater. Give us a smile." The questions were bullets, fired in rapid succession. How did they know? The video inside had only played 2 minutes ago. How did the press outside already know about the mistress? Social media, Ethan realized with horror. The people inside had been live streaming. The story was already trending. He wasn't just being kicked out of a party. He was being kicked out of society, in real time, globally. "No comment," Ethan shouted, pushing a microphone away from his face. "Get that camera out of my face. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. You'll need a lawyer for that," a photographer shouted back, laughing. "Can you afford one now?" Thorne and his team didn't stop. They marched Ethan through the gauntlet, using him as a plough to part the sea of reporters. They reached the revolving glass doors of the entrance. "This is where we part ways, Mr. Sterling," Thorne said. With one final firm shove, Ethan was thrust out into the cool night air of the city sidewalk. He stumbled, his expensive Italian dress shoes slipping on the pavement, and he fell to one knee. The heavy glass doors spun shut behind him. 2 large guards took up positions in front of them, arms crossed. The fortress was sealed, the shattering of the illusion. Ethan scrambled to his feet, brushing the grit off his bespoke trousers. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Chloe!" he yelled, looking around wildly. The revolving door spun again, and Chloe Vane emerged. She wasn't being dragged. She had walked out voluntarily, but quickly, covering her face with a clutch purse to hide from the cameras. She looked furious. Her mascara was smudged, and the cheap fabric of her red dress looked garish under the harsh streetlights. "Chloe!" Ethan rushed toward her, relief flooding his veins. At least he wasn't alone. At least he had her. "Baby, thank God. Did you see that? Did you see what she did? She's insane. She's absolutely psychotic." Ethan reached for her, trying to pull her into a hug, needing the reassurance of her touch. Chloe shoved him away, hard. Ethan stumbled back, stunned. "Chloe! Don't touch me!" she hissed, her voice vibrating with venom. She wasn't looking at him with love. She was looking at him with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You are a liar, Ethan. A fraud." "Me?" Ethan blinked, confused. "She's the one who lied. She pretended to be poor for 4 years. She's worth billions, Chloe. Billions. And she hid it from me." "And you acted like you were somebody," Chloe screamed, not caring about the paparazzi snapping photos of their breakdown from 10 feet away. "You told me you were a top executive. You told me you were going to make partner. You told me you had money." "I do," Ethan pleaded. "I make good money. I have the penthouse, the car." "You have nothing," Chloe spat. "I saw the video, Ethan. I heard what she said. She owns your company. She owns your bank. You're just a middle manager with a credit card debt. You tricked me." "I tricked you?" Ethan felt a surge of anger. "I left my wife for you. I brought you here tonight to show you off. You brought me here to be humiliated." Chloe adjusted her strap, her eyes cold. "I'm 24, Ethan. I don't date project managers with baggage. I date winners. And you're the biggest loser in New York City right now." She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A sleek black Uber pulled up to the curb seconds later. "Chloe, wait," Ethan begged, grabbing the door handle before she could open it. "Don't leave me here. Not like this. We can figure this out. We can sue her. We'll be rich. I promise." Chloe looked at his hand on the door handle, then up at his face. She sneered. "Let go, Ethan. Before I call the police and tell them you're harassing me. I'm sure the press would love that headline." Ethan let go. He watched her slide into the back seat. She didn't look back. She was already typing on her phone, probably deleting her photos of him from Instagram. The car merged into traffic and disappeared, taking the last shred of his ego with it. The repossession of dignity. Ethan stood alone on the sidewalk. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He needed to get out of here. He needed to go home, regroup, and call a lawyer. He needed his car. "Valet!" Ethan shouted, storming toward the valet stand. "My car. Now, the black Porsche Panamera. Ticket number 402. He slammed the ticket onto the podium. The valet was the same young man from earlier, the one Ethan had tossed his keys to without making eye contact. The young man looked at the ticket, then looked up at Ethan. His expression was unreadable. "1 moment, sir," the valet said. He didn't run to get the car. Instead, he signaled to a man standing in the shadows near a tow truck parked just down the block. The man in the shadows stepped forward. He was wearing a grey jumpsuit and holding a clipboard. He looked tired and bored. "Ethan Sterling?" the man asked. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" "Where is my car?" "I'm from Tri-State Asset Recovery," the man said, clicking a pen. "I'm here for the vehicle." "What?" Ethan laughed, a hysterical bubbling sound. "You're joking. I leased that car. The payments are automatic." "Yeah, about that," the repo man said, glancing at his paperwork. "We got a flag on the account about 20 minutes ago. Payment default. And since the primary guarantor on the lease pulled their backing..." "The guarantor?" Ethan's blood ran cold. "Sophia co-signed the lease?" "Says here the lease was backed by Kensington Ventures," the man read. "They revoked the guarantee, which means the contract is void effective immediately. We're taking the car." "You can't leave me here," Ethan shouted. "I have no way home." The valet stepped forward, dangling the keys. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, there are personal items in the vehicle. Would you like to retrieve them before we tow it?" Ethan snatched the keys and ran to the Porsche. He opened the door, desperate to sit in the familiar leather seat to feel safe. "Sir, you can't start the engine," the repo man warned. "Just the personal items." Ethan grabbed his sunglasses and a pack of gum from the center console. He looked at the steering wheel, the symbol of his success. He gripped it one last time. "Time's up," the repo man said. Ethan stepped out. He watched as they hooked his car, his beautiful, sleek, German-engineered identity, onto the back of the dirty truck. He watched as they hoisted it up like a carcass. The digital execution. The truck drove away. Ethan was left standing on the curb in his tuxedo, holding a pack of gum and a pair of sunglasses. It started to drizzle. Of course it did. He reached into his pocket for his phone. He needed to call an Uber. He opened the app. Payment method declined. He frowned. He switched to his Platinum Amex. Payment method declined. He switched to his debit card. Card declined. Contact your financial institution. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. He opened his banking app. He tried to log in. Access denied. Reason, account frozen, pursuant to court order. Docket 944-992B. Pending investigation for embezzlement and fraud. Embezzlement, Ethan whispered to the wet screen. A notification banner dropped down from the top of his screen. It was an email. Priority high. Sender. Human Resources. Sterling Logistics. A Kensington company. His fingers trembled so badly he almost dropped the phone. He opened the email. "Mr. Sterling, effective immediately. Your employment with Sterling Logistics is terminated for cause. An internal audit has revealed significant discrepancies in your expense reporting over the last 24 fiscal months. Given the severity of the misconduct and the breach of our code of ethics, we have forwarded our findings to the district attorney's office. Security has already cleared your desk. Your personal effects have been mailed to your address on file. Do not attempt to enter the building. Your badge has been deactivated." Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. Terminated. Fraud. District Attorney. He looked up at the Kensington Hall. The lights were still blazing. He could hear the faint sound of the orchestra playing inside. He could imagine Sophia in there, raising a glass, surrounded by warmth, wealth, and power. She hadn't just divorced him. She hadn't just embarrassed him. She had erased him. Ethan looked down at his feet. The water was soaking through his socks. He had no car. He had no money. He had no job. He had no wife. He had no mistress. He didn't even have enough money for the subway. He began to walk. He walked away from the lights, away from the cameras, away from the life he thought he deserved. He walked into the dark, wet streets of the city, a man made of ash, dissolving in the rain. The silence of his phone in his pocket was deafening. It was the sound of a world that no longer had any use for Ethan Sterling. The legal slaughter. The unraveling of Ethan Sterling's life did not happen all at once. It wasn't a quick band-aid rip. It was a slow, surgical dismantling, performed by the most expensive lawyers in New York City. 3 days after the gala, Ethan sat in a conference room at Harrow, Thorne and Associates. The table was made of mahogany, long enough to land a small plane on. On one side sat Ethan, alone, wearing a rumpled suit he had retrieved from the dry cleaners because he could no longer access his penthouse closet. On the other side sat a phalanx of 6 lawyers, led by a woman named Evelyn Sharp. She was known in the city as the Guillotine. Sophia wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. "Mr. Sterling," Evelyn Sharp began, adjusting her rimless glasses. She didn't look up from the file in front of her. "We are skipping the pleasantries. My client, Miss Kensington, has instructed us to expedite this process. She is generous, but she is not foolish." "I want half," Ethan blurted out, his voice sounding thin and pathetic in the acoustic perfection of the room. "I know the law. We were married for 4 years. California is a community property state. Her assets—" Evelyn finally looked up. Her eyes were dead. "You signed a prenuptial agreement, Mr. Sterling." "I signed a napkin," Ethan argued. "She told me it was just a formality, because her grandmother left her a small trust fund. I didn't know she was the Kensington." "Ignorance of the asset portfolio does not invalidate the signature," Evelyn said coldly. She slid a document across the table. "However, that is the least of your worries. Ms. Kensington is willing to forgo the adultery lawsuit for emotional distress and public humiliation, which, given the viral nature of the video footage from the gala, would likely bankrupt you for 3 lifetimes. In exchange, you will sign this NDA and walk away." "Walk away with what?" Ethan asked, sweating. "Your freedom," Evelyn replied. "Because if you don't sign, we release the forensic audit of your expense reports from your time at the logistics firm." Ethan froze. The air left his lungs. "Over the last 2 years," Evelyn read from a sheet, "you expensed $24,000 in client dinners that were actually dates with Miss Chloe Vane. You expensed travel accommodations that were weekend getaways to Cabo. That is corporate embezzlement, Mr. Sterling, grand larceny, prison time." Ethan slumped in his chair. He realized then that Sophia hadn't just been washing his dishes and folding his laundry all those years. She had been watching. She had known every lie, every stolen dollar, every betrayal. She had held the sword over his neck the entire time, waiting for him to give her a reason to drop it. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so violently he could barely write. He signed his life away. The social excision. If the legal battle was a slaughter, the social fallout was a nuclear winter. Ethan found out that friends in high society are not actually friends. They are barnacles that attach themselves to the hull of a successful ship. When the ship sinks, the barnacles detach instantly. He tried to call Marcus, his best man from the wedding. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected, or is no longer in service." He tried to text Brad, a VP at a rival firm he used to golf with. "Read at 4:15 p.m. No reply. Then came the internet. The video of Sophia revealing his affair on the giant screen at the gala had gone viral. It had 45 million views on TikTok. He was a meme. They called him the Diamond Fumbler. There were remixes of his terrified face when Arthur Thorne grabbed his wrist. He couldn't walk down the street without someone pointing a phone at him. He had become the face of arrogance and failure. And Chloe? The woman he had destroyed his marriage for? 2 weeks after the gala, Ethan was sitting in a dive bar in Queens, drinking cheap beer because his credit cards were frozen. The TV above the bar was tuned to an entertainment news channel. "Coming up next," the anchor chirped, "an exclusive interview with the woman caught in the middle of the Kensington scandal. Chloe Vane tells all." Ethan watched in horror as Chloe appeared on screen. She was crying, fake, dry tears. "I didn't know," Chloe sobbed into the camera. "Ethan told me they were separated. He told me she was abusive. I was a victim too. He manipulated me just like he manipulated her. I just want Sophia to know. I'm so sorry. Girl power, you know?" "Liar!" Ethan screamed at the TV, throwing his beer coaster. The bartender glared at him. "Hey pal, keep it down or get out." Ethan looked around. No one cared. He wasn't a VP anymore. He was just a drunk guy in a cheap suit, shouting at a television. The descent. 3 months later, the money was gone. The severance he got from his job was non-existent due to the embezzlement cause. The Porsche was repossessed. The lease on the penthouse was terminated. Ethan Sterling, the man who used to critique the thread count of his Egyptian cotton sheets, was now living in a basement apartment in the Bronx. The ceiling had water stains that looked like maps of countries that didn't exist. The radiator clanked like a dying engine. He had 2 roommates, a college student who played techno music until 4 a.m., and a guy named Rico who kept a pet python in a glass tank in the living room. Ethan sat on his futon, staring at his laptop. He had applied to 200 jobs. "Dear Mr. Sterling, while your background is impressive, we have decided to move forward with other candidates. Dear Mr. Sterling, at this time, we feel your values do not align with our corporate culture." The Kensington reach was infinite. Sophia didn't have to blacklist him explicitly. She didn't have to make a single phone call. The name Sterling was radioactive. No reputable company wanted to hire the man who tried to humiliate the most powerful heiress in New York. He was a liability. He sold his Rolex. The pawn shop guy laughed at him. "It's a replica, buddy. Good quality, but fake movement. Worth maybe $200. Ethan had paid $5,000 for it from a connection in the city. Another layer of his fake life peeling away. He took the $200. He needed it for groceries. The bottom 6 months later. The rain in November was cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and stayed there. Ethan pulled the collar of his jacket up. It wasn't the cashmere coat he used to wear. It was a stiff, synthetic parka he bought at a thrift store. He checked his reflection in a shop window. He looked 10 years older. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out by insomnia and regret. The arrogance that had fueled him for a decade had burned out, leaving only a pile of ash. He walked into the Daily Grind, a high-volume coffee franchise in the financial district. He wasn't there for a latte. He punched in his code at the employee entrance. "You're late, Sterling," the shift manager barked. The manager was 22 years old, with a nose ring and a power trip. "One more strike and you're out. Get on the espresso machine. Rush hour starts in 10. "Yes, sir," Ethan muttered. He tied on the green apron. The smell of burnt milk made him nauseous. For the next 4 hours, Ethan was a machine. Steam, pour, cap. Steam, pour, cap. He served men in suits who looked exactly like he used to. He saw the way they looked at him, or rather, the way they didn't look at him. To them, he was part of the machinery, a servant. "Hey," a customer snapped, tapping a credit card on the counter. "I ordered almond milk. This is oat. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Ethan looked up. The customer was a young executive, wearing a Breitling watch and a smug grin. A year ago, Ethan would have fired a man like this for incompetence. A year ago, Ethan would have destroyed him. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "I'll remake it." "Yeah, you will. And hurry up. I have a meeting at Kensington Tower." The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Kensington Tower. The new headquarters Sophia had built. He made the coffee. His hands were shaking. He handed it over. "Keep the change," the man sneered, dropping a dime into the tip jar. The encounter. It was 6 p.m. when Ethan's shift ended. He walked out the back door, into the alleyway, emptying the trash bags into the dumpster. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked around to the front of the building to catch the subway. Traffic was stopped. A motorcade was moving slowly down the street. Black SUVs with tinted windows, flanked by police motorcycles. Ethan stopped on the sidewalk. A crowd had gathered. "Who is it?" someone asked. "It's her," a woman whispered reverently. "It's the Queen of New York." The motorcade came to a halt right in front of the coffee shop. The traffic light had turned red, trapping the lead vehicle, a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom, painted a deep midnight blue. Ethan stood 10 feet away. He was frozen. He knew that car. He had seen the designs for it on Sophia's desk years ago, back when he thought she was sketching dream cars she could never afford. The back window of the Rolls-Royce hummed down silently. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. "She's going to see me," he thought. "She's going to see me in this apron, smelling like old milk, standing in the rain." He wanted to run. He wanted to hide. But he couldn't move. The window lowered completely. Sophia sat inside. She was wearing a cream-colored business suit, looking through a stack of documents. She looked peaceful. The tension that used to line her eyes when they were married, the constant worry of pleasing him, of walking on eggshells, was gone. She looked younger, vibrant, powerful. Sitting next to her was a man. He wasn't a model. He wasn't particularly handsome in the classic sense. He had kind eyes and was reading a book, holding Sophia's hand, absent-mindedly as she worked. Sophia looked up from her papers. She looked out the window. Her gaze swept over the sidewalk. It swept over the tourists, the businessmen, the street vendors. And then, for 1 second, her eyes locked onto Ethan. Ethan held his breath. He waited for the anger. He waited for the smug smile she had given him at the gala. He waited for the recognition. But it never came. Sophia's eyes slid past him without a flicker of recognition. She didn't see her ex-husband. She didn't see the man who had broken her heart. She saw a barista in a green apron. She saw a stranger. She turned back to the man next to her, smiled a genuine, warm smile. A smile Ethan realized he had never actually earned, and the window rolled back up. The light turned green. The car pulled away, disappearing into the canyon of steel and glass. The realization. Ethan stood there for a long time, rain dripping off his nose. That was the true punishment. If she had hated him, it would have meant he still mattered. If she had mocked him, it would have meant he still held power over her emotions. But she didn't hate him. She had simply deleted him. He was the one who had told her, years ago, "You're just background noise, Sophia." Now, the universe had balanced the scales. He was the background noise. He was the static in someone else's broadcast. Ethan looked down at his hands. They were red and chapped from the sanitizer and hot water. He looked at the dime the rude customer had thrown in his tip jar. He realized then that the Diamond Gala hadn't been the night he lost his money. It was the night he lost his delusion. He had spent his whole life chasing diamonds, thinking he was a jeweler, only to find out he was just the velvet cushion, meant to hold the treasure for a moment, and then be discarded when he stopped being useful. He turned around and walked toward the subway station, descending into the dark, underground tunnels, leaving the glittering world of Sophia Kensington far, far above him. Ethan's story is a brutal reminder that true value isn't found in flashiness, loud posturing, or the illusion of success. He mistook Sophia's humility for weakness and her silence for ignorance. In doing so, he didn't just lose a fortune, he lost the only person who had actually loved him for who he was. By the time he realized that the boring housewife was the architect of his entire life, the foundation had already crumbled. He learned the hard way that in the game of life, the king might move one space at a time, but the queen can go wherever she wants, and checkmate comes when you least expect it. Wow, talk about instantaneous karma. If you enjoyed watching Ethan get exactly what he deserved, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you do if you found out your partner was secretly a billionaire? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next story of betrayal and revenge. Thanks for watching. The hum of the heart monitor was the only sound she trusted. Elara lay in the sterile white room, the scent of antiseptic battling the sweet new scent of the baby in her arms. She had done it. Lily was here. Perfect. She looked at her husband Marcus expecting joy, but saw only a man standing in his own shadow. Then his mother Eleanor stepped forward. She wasn't carrying balloons. She wasn't carrying a teddy bear. She was carrying a manila envelope, which she slid onto the bedside table right next to the half-eaten Jell-O. "We've taken the liberty," Eleanor said, her voice as cold as the steel on the IV pole, of handling the arrangements. "These are divorce papers." The words hung in the air, thick and toxic, poisoning the sacred atmosphere of the maternity ward. Elara's breath hitched. The stitches from her C-section pulled in a sharp, searing protest. What did you say? Marcus, her husband of 2 years, couldn't meet her eyes." He was fixated on a crack in the ceiling tiles, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his tailored trousers. He looked less like a new father, and more like a child dragged to a funeral. His mother, Eleanor Lockwood, however, looked directly at Elara. Her gaze was one of practical, emotionless assessment, like a butcher inspecting a cut of meat. She wore a string of pearls that probably cost more than Elara's entire decoy freelance design business earned in a year. "I said," Eleanor repeated, enunciating every syllable, "these are divorce papers. We, that is Marcus, has decided this marriage was a mistake, an error in judgment." "A mistake?" Elara's voice cracked. She clutched baby Lily closer, a primal instinct to shield her from this. She's an hour old, Eleanor. She's your granddaughter." "That is a biological fact, yes," Eleanor conceded, unfazed. "But a Lockwood heir deserves a certain lineage, a certain foundation, one you simply cannot provide." The cruelty was so profound, so sudden, that Elara's mind struggled to process it. This was the woman whose Sunday dinners she had endured, whose passive-aggressive comments about her simple background she had ignored, all for the love of Marcus. And Marcus, he just stood there. "Marcus," Elara pleaded, her voice a raw whisper. "Look at me. Look at her. Tell me this isn't real." Marcus finally tore his gaze from the ceiling. His eyes were red-rimmed, but not with tears of joy. They were tears of weakness, of pure, unadulterated cowardice. "Elara, it's for the best. Mother is right. This isn't working." "Not working," she shrieked, the sound tearing from her throat. "I just gave birth to your child." "Please, Elara, don't be hysterical." Eleanor sighed, waving a dismissive hand.
It's so unbecoming. We are prepared to be generous, given your situation. There is a settlement proposal in there. We've backdated the separation agreement to 6 months ago to make things cleaner. It states irreconcilable differences. Backdated? Elara felt the blood drain from her face, replaced by a glacial cold rage. They had been planning this. While she was pregnant, while she was picking out names and painting a nursery, they were meeting with lawyers. Of course, Eleanor continued, we can't have this entanglement, sullying the Lockwood name. We will provide a small trust for the child provided you sign the custody papers. She will naturally be raised by us. You can have visitation. Custody. Elara was shaking now, a tremor that started in her hands and spread through her entire body. You want to take my daughter? We want to raise her, Eleanor corrected. You can't possibly give her the life she deserves. What can you offer a 2-bedroom apartment paid for by freelance gigs? She needs stability. She needs the right schools, the right connections. Elara stared at the manila envelope. It was a declaration of war. She looked at Marcus, a man she once thought she loved, and saw only a hollow shell. She looked at Eleanor, a woman whose entire identity was built on a name and a bank account she didn't even earn. And then Elara did something no one expected. She stopped shaking. Her breathing evened out. The tears welling in her eyes receded, replaced by a stillness that was far more terrifying. She carefully adjusted Lily in her arms, kissed her tiny forehead, and then very slowly lifted her gaze to her mother-in-law. Eleanor, she said, her voice quiet, but vibrating with a new, terrifying power. Did you read the part of my hospital admission form under emergency contact? Eleanor frowned. What are you babbling about? It wasn't Marcus, Elara said. It was Sebastian Vance. Your brother, Marcus mumbled, finally speaking. You said he was a project manager. Elara's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. Something like that. He's my COO. The confusion on their faces was palpable. And this settlement, Elara continued, gesturing to the envelope with her chin. I'm sure it's lovely, but I have to reject it. As for custody, you will not come within 100 feet of my daughter again, not without a court order, which you will not get. Eleanor scoffed. And who exactly is going to stop me? Your project manager brother. No, Elara said, shifting her weight. The pain from her incision was a grounding reminder of what she had just endured. My lawyers and my bank account. She locked eyes with Marcus. Get out. Elara, be reasonable, Marcus stammered, his bravado crumbling into confusion. Mother, maybe we should get out. This time the voice was not that of Elara, the freelance designer. It was not Elara, the simple, accommodating wife. It was the voice of Vance Sterling, the woman who had built a 9 billion empire from nothing. It was the voice of a woman who had just been handed a war, and who fully intended to win. Eleanor, for the first time, looked uncertain. She grabbed the envelope and clutched it to her chest. You will regret this, Elara. You have no idea the power you are trifling with. No, Eleanor, Elara said, settling back against the pillows, her daughter sleeping peacefully on her chest. You have no idea. They left. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that was heavier than all their screaming. Elara looked down at Lily. Well, little one, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion again. It looks like it's just you and me, and about 4,000 employees. Let's get to work. She reached for her personal phone, not the one Marcus knew about, but the encrypted one, and dialed a number. Sebastian, she said, her voice firm. They did it. It's time. Activate the Phoenix protocol. To understand how Elara Vance Sterling, the enigmatic founder of Aura Sphere, a tech and wellness conglomerate that had quietly devoured the market, ended up in this position, you had to understand why she was hiding in the first place. Elara hadn't been born into wealth. She'd been born into a world of spreadsheets and code. She'd built Aura Sphere from her college dorm room, fueled by ramen, and a relentless belief that technology could be used to genuinely improve lives. She coded the first iteration of the Aura Wellness app herself, under the pseudonym E. Vance, to avoid the rampant sexism of the tech bro world. When the app exploded, so did her life. By 25, she was a paper billionaire. By 28, she was liquid. But she was also isolated. Every man she met either wanted to be her sugar baby or her business rival. She was surrounded by yes men and sycophants. She was sick of it. So she crafted a new identity. Elara Vance, a simple, talented freelance graphic designer. She kept her high-security penthouse in the city, which she told people she was house-sitting for a rich client, but rented a modest, normal apartment where she supposedly lived. She wore clothes from the Row and Loro Piana, but to the untrained eye of the Lockwoods, the minimalist logo-free wools and cashmeres looked like nice basics from Zara. She'd met Marcus Lockwood at a charity fundraiser she'd attended as E. Vance, a major donor. He was there trying to network to drum up investment for his family's flailing business, Lockwood Textiles. He didn't recognize her when she bumped into him 2 weeks later at a coffee shop dressed as Elara, her hair in a messy bun, sketching on an iPad. She let him discover her. She let him be the big man from the important family. He was handsome, charming in a shallow way, and she'd thought kind. He was her escape into normalcy. She fell in love not with him, but with the idea of him, the idea of a normal life. The Lockwoods, however, were another story. From the first dinner, Eleanor had made her distaste clear. The Lockwoods presented themselves as old money, residing in a sprawling but slightly dated mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. They spoke of their heritage, their standards, and their company Lockwood Textiles. Graphic design, Eleanor had said at that first dinner, tasting the words as if they were spoiled milk. How creative. Is there much of a future in that? It pays the bills, Elara had replied, with a quiet smile, thinking of the $50 million R&D budget she'd just approved for Aura Sphere's new biotech wing. Eleanor had zeroed in on her. And your family, dear, the Vances, I'm not familiar with them. Are they East Coast Vances? Midwest Vances, Elara said. My parents passed away when I was young. I have a brother, Sebastian. He's in project management. Sebastian, in reality, was Sebastian Vance Sterling, her cousin, and closest confidant. He was the public-facing COO of Aura Sphere, a man with an MBA from Stanford, and the ruthless efficiency of a military general. He had played his part as her project manager brother, with theatrical flair complaining about his tough boss, Elara, over Thanksgiving dinner. The Lockwoods' wealth Elara had known from the start was a house of cards. Her private financial team, as a matter of course, had run a background check on Marcus before their third date. Lockwood Textiles was a dinosaur refusing to modernize. They were leveraged to the hilt, drowning in debt and living off their reputation. This, Elara realized, was why they were so cruel. They weren't just snobs. They were desperate. The other woman, Eleanor had mentioned, was their lottery ticket. Or so they thought. Marcus has reconnected with Isabella Davenport. Eleanor had cooed to her friends at a country club luncheon just last week, a fact Elara's security detail had dutifully reported. Yes, those Davenports. Those The shipping scions, a much more suitable match. Elara knew all about Isabella Davenport. Sebastian's team had already compiled a file. Isabella wasn't a Davenport at all. Her real name was Jessica Riley, a mid-level con artist from Florida who specialized in fleecing entitled desperate men. She'd leased a Bentley, rented a mansion, and was busy convincing the Lockwoods she was their savior. The Lockwoods were trying to dump a penniless designer to marry their son into a dynasty, not realizing they were trading a secret billionaire for a complete fraud. The irony would have been funny if Elara wasn't looking at her newborn daughter's face, wondering how a father could walk away from this. The Phoenix Protocol she had activated was a contingency she and Sebastian had created when she first decided to marry Marcus. A what-if scenario. It involved 3 phases. Phase 1, containment. Secure Elara and the baby. Phase 2, fortification. Assemble the legal and financial teams. Phase 3, reckoning. A systematic, precise, and overwhelming response. As Elara sat in the hospital bed, the door opened. It wasn't a nurse. It was 2 large men in dark suits with earpieces. They were followed by Sebastian, who looked immaculate in a Tom Ford suit carrying a baby carrier that likely cost more than a car. Sebastian. Elara sighed in relief. Elara. He kissed her forehead, then gazed at the baby. She's a Vance Sterling. She's perfect. The team is here. The car is downstairs. Your discharge papers are being handled. Handled. Dr. Peterson was a major beneficiary of our Aura Health Hospital grant last year. He was more than happy to expedite your discharge due to family stress. Sebastian's team worked with silent efficiency. They swept the room for listening devices, a standard paranoid precaution for Elara, which now seemed chillingly necessary. They packed her bag. Sebastian gently took Lily, strapping her into the high-security carrier. "The Lockwoods?" Elara asked, as they moved her into a wheelchair. "In the lobby," Sebastian said, his voice tight. "Eleanor is making a scene, demanding to see her granddaughter. Hospital security is unpersuaded. They're being detained for causing a disturbance." Good. They didn't use the main elevator. The security team guided them to a private service elevator. As the doors opened to the underground parking garage, Elara saw it. Not her normal Subaru, but the matte black bulletproof Mercedes Maybach. "I see we're skipping the subtlety," Elara murmured. "Phase 2 has begun, boss," Sebastian said, opening the door for her. "We're going home. The real home." The real home was not the 2-bedroom apartment Marcus had known. It was the penthouse of the Ether Tower, a building Elara's holding company, Vance Sterling Holdings, owned entirely. The elevator opened directly into her living room, a 3-story expanse of glass and steel overlooking the city. A full-time vetted staff, including a neonatal nurse Elara had on retainer for someday, was waiting. "Welcome home, Ms. Vance," the nurse, a kind-faced woman named Clara, said. "We have the nursery prepared precisely to your specifications." The penthouse was less a home and more a fortress. It ran on a separate power grid, had its own air filtration system, and was monitored 24/7 by a security team run by ex-Mossad agents. This was the E. Vance side of her life, the side that managed billions and had to worry about corporate espionage and kidnapping threats. Elara handed Lily to Clara. "She's just eaten. I need an hour and a shower." "Of course, madam." Elara walked into her master suite. Her normal clothes were gone. Hanging in her closet was her true armor, a row of custom-tailored suits, silk blouses, and the quiet, lethal elegance of a woman who runs the world. She showered the hospital smell circling the drain. As the hot water sluiced over her, the shock began to wear off, replaced by a cold, crystalline anger. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't a simple divorce. This was a conspiracy. They had waited until she was at her most vulnerable post-birth, hormonal exhausted to try and steal her child. She emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a robe and found Sebastian in her home office. The room was already a command center. Multiple screens showed stock tickers, news feeds, and encrypted communications. "Status," Elara said, tying her robe. "The Lockwoods were released from hospital security. Eleanor is screaming kidnapping to anyone who will listen." "Let her. It'll be a good test for our slander case. What's their financial position today?" Sebastian pulled up a file. "Worse than we thought. Lockwood Textiles isn't just failing. It's a corpse. They've been cooking the books for 3 quarters. They have a $15 million balloon payment due on a bridge loan in 10 days. The lender is Sterling Garrick Financial." Elara's eyebrows shot up. Us, Sebastian confirmed. "A small aggressive lending firm we acquired last year for its distressed asset portfolio. The Lockwoods loan was buried in the package. They have no idea they owe their biggest debt to you." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Elara's face. Oh, that is poetic. Call the loan. Call it now. I want a default notice on their desk by morning." "I already have the team drafting it," Sebastian said. "But there's more. The other woman, Isabella Davenport, aka Jessica Riley. She's not just a con artist. She's good. She just convinced Richard Lockwood to liquidate his last remaining and hidden private stock portfolio, about $2 million, and invest it with her in an offshore venture. She's bleeding them dry before they even sign the marriage certificate. Perfect. Let her. We'll send our file on her to the FBI, but not yet. Let her take them to the cleaners first. What about Marcus?" Sebastian's face softened. "He's been calling your normal phone. It's going straight to the decoy voicemail. He's left 14 messages. They're pathetic. He's confused. He loves you. He's sorry. His mother made him do it." "He's a child," Elara said, the disgust thick in her voice. "He's irrelevant. Focus on Eleanor and Richard. They're the head of the snake." "Which brings us to phase 3, Sebastian said, turning to a new screen. "The legal team." Elara didn't use a local lawyer. Her legal team was a global force. "I want Julian Thorne," Elara said. Sebastian winced. "Julian Elara that's bringing in a tactical nuclear weapon to a knife fight. He's not a divorce lawyer. He's a corporate executioner. He handled the Sony Aurasphere media merger." "This isn't a divorce, Sebastian. This is a hostile takeover of my life. They came for my child. They're getting Julian Thorne. He's in London. He'll be in New York." The next morning at the Lockwood mansion, chaos reigned. "What do you mean, kidnapping?" Eleanor shrieked at her son, Marcus. "She's the mother. She just left. She left in a car I've never seen." Marcus paced the threadbare Persian rug. "It was like something a president rides in, and the men with her. Mother, they looked dangerous." "Don't be ridiculous." Richard Lockwood, the family patriarch, snapped from behind his copy of the Wall Street Journal. His face was a pale, pasty gray. "She's a designer. She's bluffing. She probably hired some actors." "Then what is this?" Their lawyer, a small-time local attorney named Bob Greer, said, waving a piece of paper. He had been summoned for an emergency breakfast meeting. "This was just delivered by courier. It's from Thorne, Adler and Croft." "Is that good?" Eleanor asked. "Good." Greer laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Eleanor Julian Thorne is the senior partner. He doesn't do divorce. He does dismemberment. He represents oligarchs and tech titans. We're not in the same league. We're not in the same sport. We're not even playing the same planet." Before Richard could respond, the maid, one of the last remaining staff, walked in holding a silver tray. "Another courier, Mr. Lockwood. This one is marked Final Notice from Sterling Garrick Financial." Richard snatched the letter. His hands shook as he read it. The Wall Street Journal slipped from his lap. "Richard—" "What is it?" Eleanor demanded. Richard looked up, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. They called the loan. The $15 million. They're demanding payment in full. Default. They're seizing our assets." "But they can't," Eleanor cried. "We have 10 days. The default clause," Richard whispered, "was based on material misrepresentation of assets. They're claiming we've been insolvent for months." "That's Elara. It has to be," Marcus shouted. "How does she have this kind of power?" Bob Greer sank into a chair. "Forget the divorce. Forget the baby. We need to talk about bankruptcy. As in, tomorrow." The phone rang. It was Greer's office. His secretary was frantic. "They're here," Greer stammered, his face white. "Julian Thorne's associates. They're at my office. They want to schedule an immediate deposition. For all of you." "Tell them to wait," Eleanor shouted. "I can't," Greer squeaked. "They've just served me with a temporary injunction and a lease pendants. They've frozen all your known accounts. Eleanor, Richard, they've frozen everything." The deposition was scheduled for 48 hours later. It was, as Julian Thorne's summons had so politely put it, non-negotiable. The Lockwood family, for the first time in their lives, was well and truly terrified. Their old money swagger had evaporated, replaced by the panicked scrambling of cornered animals. Their local lawyer, Bob Greer, was so far out of his depth he was practically drowning. He had spent the last 2 days trying to get a single one of Julian Thorne's associates on the phone, only to be routed to paralegals who spoke to him with bored surgical precision. "They won't budge," Greer told the Lockwoods, his tie undone, his hair a mess. "They say any attempt to delay will be met with a motion for sanctions." "What about Isabella?" Eleanor demanded, her voice sounding shrill. "Her family has influence. Can't the Davenports make a call? I tried to call her," Marcus admitted, looking miserable. He was sitting on a priceless antique chaise lounge that as of yesterday was now collateral in a default. "The number she gave me. It's disconnected." "What?" Eleanor's head snapped toward him. "And the rental house she was at," Richard added, reading a text. "The leasing agency just called. She's gone. Cleared out. The Bentley was leased. It was all fake." The silence in the grand, dusty drawing room was absolute. The con was up. The beautiful, wealthy heiress who was supposed to save their family was in fact just another shark in the water, and she had taken their last $1.2 million with her. Eleanor Lockwood actually stumbled. She gripped the back of a chair. She stole from us." "Yes," Marcus said, his voice dead. "And now Elara is going to finish the job." Meanwhile, in the ether tower, Elara was not just recovering. She was rebuilding. The penthouse was now a hybrid of a neonatal unit and a war room. Elara, holding Lily, paced the floor of the boardroom, while Sebastian and a team of analysts projected data onto a smart glass wall. "Julian Thorne's team is ready," Sebastian reported. "They've filed the injunction. They've frozen the accounts. The notice of default on Lockwood Textiles is public." "What's the blowback?" Elara asked, her voice calm. "Total. Their creditors are lining up. The board is demanding Richard's resignation, not that the board matters, since we now effectively are the board. The Greenwich Chronicle is already sniffing around asking why the proud family company is shuttering. They're ruined, Elara, before we even get to the deposition." Elara looked down at Lily, who was making a small, sleeping fist. She felt a pang. Not of pity, but of a strange, hollow sadness. This was the family she had tried to join. This was the man she had loved. "No," Elara said. "They think they're ruined. They don't know the meaning of the word yet. They tried to take my daughter. They tried to render me penniless and homeless. They don't get to just be bankrupt. They need to understand what they did." "What's the next move?" Sebastian asked. "The deposition. I'll be there. And Sebastian," she said, looking up, "I want you to leak the Forbes story, the one we've been sitting on." Sebastian blinked. "The Phantom CEO piece, the full E. Vance, reveal Elara, that's the final card. Are you sure your privacy will be gone? Forever?" "My privacy was an illusion," Elara said. "It was a luxury I can no longer afford. They built this entire scheme on the idea that I was a nobody. I want them to see with the whole world exactly who they tried to destroy." "I'll make the call," Sebastian said, a grim smile on his face. "It'll be live by 9 a.m. tomorrow, just as you walk into the deposition." "Good," Elara said. "Now I need Julian Thorne on a video call. And get me the file on Isabella Davenport. I want to send a little gift to the U.S. Marshals." The Lockwoods world had crumbled in 48 hours. But for Elara, it was just the beginning. She was dismantling their facade, brick by brick, until nothing was left but the truth. The next morning, Elara left Lily in the care of Nurse Clara and the security team. She stepped into her private elevator not as the simple girl from the hospital, but as herself. She was wearing a bespoke midnight blue military-style suit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, powerful ponytail. Her only jewelry was a simple watch, a Patek Philippe prototype that wasn't even on the market. She was flanked by Sebastian and two of her personal security team. The car, the same Maybach, pulled up to the sterile glass and steel office building where the deposition was being held. As she stepped out, she heard the click, click, click of cameras. Paparazzi. Dozens of them. Ms. Vance, is it true? Are you the founder of Aurasphere? Elara over here Forbes is calling you the Phantom CEO. Sebastian shielded her, but Elara just raised her chin. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She just walked a queen walking into her court. Upstairs in the conference room, the Lockwoods were waiting. They looked like they hadn't slept. They looked small. "What is that noise?" Eleanor hissed, looking out the window at the media circus below. It's for her," Marcus said, his face ashen. He was looking at his phone at the Forbes homepage. The headline was blazing the Phantom of Ether Tower, how E. Vance, the world's most reclusive billionaire, built a 9B empire. The article featured a high-resolution professional photo of Elara, a photo she had personally approved. "E. Vance," Richard whispered. "Elara, Vance, Sterling." The conference room door opened. In walked Julian Thorne, a man who looked like he could foreclose on a country. He was followed by a team of 6 associates, each carrying a banker's box of files. And then Elara walked in. The room fell silent. Marcus looked at her, his jaw slack. He was not looking at his wife. He was looking at a complete and total stranger. "Good morning," Elara said, her voice echoing in the silent room. "Shall we begin?" The deposition was taking place in a vast, soul-crushingly beige conference room at Julian Thorne's firm. The air was chilled. A court stenographer was already seated, her fingers poised. The Lockwoods, Eleanor, Richard, and Marcus were huddled on one side of the massive mahogany table with their lawyer Bob Greer. They looked small and wilted like dying plants. The Forbes article had been released exactly 1 hour prior, and the shock was still rippling through them. Then Elara entered. It wasn't just her suit or her entourage. It was her presence. The exhausted, vulnerable new mother from the hospital was gone. In her place was a CEO, a commander. "Ms. Vance," Bob Greer stammered, standing out of nervous reflex. "My clients, there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Alara didn't even look at him. She took her seat at the head of the table. Julian Thorne sat at her right hand. "Mr. Thorne," Alara said, her voice clear and carrying, "please begin." Julian, a man whose smile had been known to devalue stocks, opened a sleek black binder. "Thank you, Ms. Vance. Let the record show that Alara Vance Sterling, Richard Lockwood, Eleanor Lockwood, and Marcus Lockwood are present for this deposition regarding the divorce proceedings and the custody of the minor child, Lily Vance Sterling." He turned his gaze on Bob Greer. "Mr. Greer, my office sent you my client's financial disclosure this morning. I trust you've had time to review the 84-page summary." Greer, who had received the document via email and seen the final number. A figure with 10 digits, looked like he was going to be physically ill. Yes, we have. Mr. Thorne, in light of this new information, my clients are prepared to withdraw the divorce petition immediately. And the custody? All of it. We withdraw. Eleanor nodded frantically. "Yes, a mistake. We just want what's best for Alara. We love Alara." Julian Thorne held up a hand. The room fell silent. "That's very kind of you," he said, his voice laced with acid. "But I'm afraid we are not accepting your withdrawal. My client, Ms. Vance Sterling, is now countersuing for divorce, on grounds of fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit custodial interference." "Conspiracy?" Greer squeaked. "What else?" Thorne continued. "Would you call a premeditated plan to serve a woman with divorce papers less than an hour after childbirth? A plan, I might add, that included a backdated separation agreement and a fraudulent settlement designed to rob her of her parental rights." He slid a document across the table. "Exhibit A, a sworn affidavit from your former paralegal, who you let go last month. She kept very meticulous notes of your meetings with Eleanor and Richard. She details quite clearly the plot to remove the child from the indigent mother." Greer's face went from pale to translucent. "But that's not why we're here today," Thorne said, steepling his fingers. "We're here to discuss assets. Mr. Richard Lockwood, let's talk about Lockwood Textiles." The company is in default," Richard mumbled. "It is," Thorne agreed. "A default on a $15 million loan held by Sterling Garrick Financial, a firm, as you now know, wholly owned by my client. We are calling that loan. We are seizing the company's assets, its properties, and its brand name to satisfy the debt." "You can't," Eleanor cried. "That's our family's legacy." "Your family's legacy," Thorne countered, "was a bankrupt shell you were using as a piggy bank. Which brings me to Exhibit B." He signaled an associate who placed a set of spreadsheets in front of them. "These are your personal bank records, Mr. Lockwood. They show a transfer of $1, $2 million from a hidden brokerage account to an offshore entity. An entity run by a Ms. Isabella Davenport, or as the FBI knows her, Jessica Riley." Marcus flinched as if he'd been slapped. "You," Thorne said, pointing his pen at Richard, "committed wire fraud and violated the terms of your loan by hiding that asset. And you," he said, swiveling to Eleanor, "were an active participant in the conspiracy. We have the text messages to Ms. Riley promising her a cut of the Lockwood estate once Marcus was free. You were both being conned while simultaneously trying to con my client." Eleanor Lockwood looked for the first time in her life like she had been truly and completely defeated. "This," Thorne said, his voice dropping to a predatory whisper, "is a criminal matter. My client has not yet decided if she will be handing these files to the district attorney. What do you want? Richard whispered. He was a broken man. My client wants clarity, Thorne said. She wants this over. You will sign this. He slid a new document across the table. It was a single page. This is a full and final divorce settlement. You, Marcus, will get nothing. No alimony, no assets, no access to Aurisphere, no payout. You will walk away with the clothes on your back and the debts you've personally incurred. And my daughter. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. Lily, I want to see my daughter. Elara, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. Her voice cut through the room like a shard of ice. No. Marcus looked at her, his eyes wide and pleading. Elara, please. She's my daughter. I love her. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught, Elara said, standing up. You're sorry I'm not the poor, simple girl you could push around. You're sorry your mother's plan didn't work. You sat there in that hospital room and you watched them try to take my child. You didn't not know. You chose. My mother, he started. Your mother is a criminal, Elara said flatly. And you are a coward. You will have no parental rights. Your name will not be on the birth certificate. You will not see her. You will not contact her. She will know one day that her mother's strength was enough for both of them. She turned to Eleanor and Richard. As for you, the loan on your company, it's been bought by me. As of 9:00 a.m. this morning. The company is mine. The house in Greenwich, which was leveraged as collateral, is mine. I am evicting you. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings. You can't, Eleanor shrieked. Where will we go? I couldn't possibly care, Elara said. She looked at Julian. Are we done? One last thing, Thorne said. He looked at Marcus. You will sign a comprehensive lifetime non-disclosure agreement if you ever speak of Miss Vance. Sterling. Your brief marriage or your child to anyone, a reporter, a friend, a future girlfriend, she will sue you for breach of contract and she will own your future for the rest of your life. Do you understand? Marcus, tears streaming down his face, just nodded, his body shaking. Elara walked to the door. She paused her hand on the handle and looked back at the family that had tried to destroy her. My project manager brother Sebastian, she said. He'll be the one overseeing the liquidation of Lockwood Textiles. He's very much looking forward to it. She turned and walked out of the room, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. She didn't look back. The aftermath of the deposition was not a battle. It was a surrender. Marcus, Eleanor, and Richard signed everything. They signed away the company, the house, the divorce, the custody. They signed the NDAs. They were terrified. The threat of criminal charges for fraud combined with the public humiliation had broken them. Elara was true to her word. At 9:00 a.m. the next day, a team of professional movers employed by one of Elara's holding companies arrived at the Greenwich mansion. Sebastian was there in a crisp suit holding a clipboard. Ms. Lockwood, he said to Eleanor, who was standing on the lawn in a bathrobe, her hair wild. You have 1 hour, personal effects only. The antiques, the art, the silver, all of it is now the property of Vance Sterling Holdings pending auction to satisfy your debts. Eleanor wept. Richard just sat on the steps, a vacant look in his eyes. The empire built on a name and a lie had fallen in a single day. Marcus was nowhere to be found. He had, as Sebastian's team later reported, taken a bus to a friend's apartment in the city, carrying a single duffel bag. Elara, back in the ether tower, watched none of this. She was in the nursery holding Lily as the Forbes interview went live on television. The world was finally meeting E. Vance. "And so," the reporter was saying in a pre-recorded interview, "you built this entire multi-billion-dollar conglomerate in secret." Why, Elara on screen looked poised and powerful. "I didn't build it in secret," she replied, her voice smooth and confident. "I just built it without ego. I wanted the work to speak for itself. I wanted Aurasphere to be the brand, not Elara Vance. But that's changing now. Why come forward?" Elara on screen paused. She looked directly into the camera. "I became a mother, and I realized that hiding my strength was a disservice to my daughter. I want her to grow up seeing that a woman's power isn't something to be hidden or ashamed of. It's something to be used, to build, to protect." "And your recent personal challenges," the reporter pressed gently. "The divorce." "My personal life," Elara said, "was a lesson. I learned that some people are only interested in you when they think you are small. They are terrified of a woman who knows her own worth. I am no longer interested in accommodating those people. My focus is my daughter and my company, and we are launching a new initiative." "Tell me," the reporter said. "It's called the Phoenix Foundation," Elara said, "funded by a $500 million personal endowment. It will provide legal services, financial support, and relocation services for mothers and children in situations of domestic and financial abuse. No woman should ever be made to feel small or threatened or trapped, especially not when she is at her most vulnerable." In the penthouse, the real Elara smiled, kissing Lily's head. "That's for you, little one." The world exploded. Aurasphere's stock, which was privately held but had public bonds, soared. Elara was inundated with messages of support. She was instantly lauded as a feminist icon, a business visionary, and a mama bear in the shark tank of the corporate world. She was also in some circles terrifying. The woman who had, in 48 hours, publicly unveiled herself as a billionaire, dismantled her enemies, and launched a $500 million charity. The Lockwoods, in contrast, vanished. Their names were mud. Lockwood became a byword in Greenwich circles for failure and scandal. Eleanor and Richard were last seen moving into a small rented condo in a less than fashionable part of Florida, their old money reputation permanently incinerated. And Marcus. He tried one last time. He showed up at the Ether Tower, begging the security guards. "Please, just tell her I'm here. I'm her husband. I was..." Elara, who was monitoring the lobby feed from her office, watched him. He looked thin, disheveled. The charm was gone, revealing the weak, hollow man beneath. He was crying. "Send him up," she said against Sebastian's immediate protest. "Elara, that's not..." "It's fine, Seb. Send him up. I'll be in the lobby." She took the private elevator down. The lobby of the Ether Tower was a cavern of Italian marble and glass with a 30-foot waterfall. Marcus was standing in the middle of it, looking like a shipwreck. "Elara," he breathed, rushing forward. "Elara, thank God. I saw the interview. It was amazing. You're amazing. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. My mother, she poisoned me." Elara stood still, her arms crossed. "And you drank it?" "Yes, but I'm clean now. I see it. I love you, Elara. Not the money. I loved you when you were a designer. I love you now. We can fix this for Lily. For us." He reached out to touch her. Elara took one step back. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was not unkind. It was something worse. It was indifferent. "You didn't love Elara, the designer. You loved a version of me that made you feel big. You loved that I was small. You loved that I was simple. No, that's not true. The second I wasn't, she continued, the second I was a mother with a child and I needed you to be strong, you broke. You didn't just bend, you shattered, and you let your mother hand me divorce papers. There is no us, Marcus. There is me, and there is my daughter. The you that I thought I loved, he never existed. He was a story I told myself. And the man standing in front of me, she said, her eyes sweeping over him, is not someone I respect. And I will not have anyone in my daughter's life that I do not respect. She nodded to her security detail, who stepped forward. Elara, wait, he cried, as they gently but firmly took his arms. Don't do this, I'm nothing without you. Elara looked at him one last final time. I know, she said, and she turned and walked back to the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a silent, final hiss. 1 year later, the Ether Tower was no longer a phantom building. It was perhaps the most famous landmark in New York, a symbol of a new kind of power. Its owner, Elara Vance Sterling, was no longer a secret. She was an icon. Forbes had put her on its cover, not just as a billionaire, but as the strategist. Time had named her Mother of the Year, a dual-meaning title celebrating both her daughter and her philanthropic revolution. Her life was no longer a fortress. It was a statement. Today, the main boardroom, a room that had once been her secret war room, was full. The entire board of Aurasphere, a collection of the sharpest minds in tech finance and media, sat in respectful silence. Elara stood at the head of the table. She was not the CEO of old hiding behind an E. Vance pseudonym. She was not the simple designer who wore quiet cashmere. She was in a striking custom-tailored white suit, her hair pulled back. She commanded the room not with a gavel, but with an aura of absolute, unshakable authority. And so, she was concluding, tapping a smart screen that showed a graph climbing towards the heavens. The Q4 profits from the Aura Life Biotech division have outperformed all projections by 80%. The Vance protocol for cellular regeneration is now in Phase 3 trials. Aurasphere is not just a wellness company. We are now officially the future of human longevity. The room erupted in applause. She let it die down her face, serene. Thank you, she said, but that's not the final item on the agenda. The final item is personal. She clicked a remote. The screen changed, dissolving from stock tickers to a single beautiful photograph of a smiling 1-year-old girl with Elara's eyes sitting in a field of wildflowers. This is Lily, Elara said, her voice softening, but losing none of its power. 1 year ago, I started a charitable fund in a moment of clarity. I called it the Phoenix Foundation because I thought I was rising from the ashes. She paused, looking at the faces around the table. I was wrong. I wasn't just rising. I was protecting. The work we've done this year providing legal aid, emergency housing, and financial extraction for victims of domestic and financial abuse has been vital, but it's not enough. She clicked the remote again. The words, "The Lily Foundation," appeared over the photo. As of today, Elara announced, the fund is being renamed. It's no longer a story about my past, it's a promise for her future. And its mission is expanding. It's not just about a shield, it's about a sword. We will no longer just help women escape bad situations, we will fund them to build new ones. A new slide appeared. The Lily Scholars. Full STEM scholarships for single mothers. To the Aura Seed Fund Venture Capital, specifically for female founders who have left abusive partnerships. The Safe Tower Initiative. Funding for childcare centers in corporate parks, starting with our own. We are not just helping women escape, Elara said, her voice ringing with conviction. We are helping them win. We are building an army of new leaders, new founders, and new creators, all funded by the work we do in this room. The Lily Foundation will not just be a charity, it will be an engine. There was a stunned silence, and then, led by Sebastian, the entire board rose to their feet in a standing ovation that was less about politeness and more about genuine, thunderous awe. An hour later, the boardroom was empty, save for Elara and Sebastian. She had kicked off her heels and was rubbing her temples. An engine. Sebastian smiled, handing her a bottle of sparkling water. I liked that. I meant it. Elara sighed, taking a sip. Any final updates on the old world? Sebastian knew what she meant. He pulled up his tablet. The quarterly "Where Are They Now" report, boss, you got it. He swiped. Richard and Eleanor Lockwood. They sold the last of Eleanor's personal jewelry, the pieces we couldn't legally seize, as collateral to pay off the last of their credit card debt. They live in a rented condo in Delray Beach. Their old money friends won't talk to them. They're social pariahs. They are, for all intents and purposes, ghosts. Good, Elara said quietly. Not with malice, but with a sense of finality. The house, the Greenwich mansion, was sold at auction to a hedge fund manager who, ironically, made his first fortune shorting Lockwood Textiles a decade ago. He had it torn down, built a glass box. Nothing of them remains. Poetic. And, Marcus, Sebastian's smile faded slightly. He tried Elara. He really tried. Tried what? He tried to break the NDA. About 6 months ago. He was working a dead-end job in San Diego and decided he was owed a piece of your new public life. He went to the Daily Veil, our least favorite tabloid. Elara tensed. And, Sebastian said, Julian Thorne is a sadist and a genius. The Veil's lawyers called us as per the injunction. We faxed them the NDA, the entire 40-page document. Their legal counsel called Julian back. I have the quote. He said, Mr. Thorne, this is not a non-disclosure agreement. This is a legal work of art. It's a suicide pact. The penalty clause wasn't just financial. It was reputational. It gave us the right to buy every billboard in his city and post his bank statements on them. It gave us the right to take out full-page ads detailing his fraud, his cowardice, his conspiracy. What did the Veil do? Elara asked. They threw him out, literally. Their lawyers then sent him a bill for the 3 hours they spent reviewing the NDA just for wasting their time. Elara was silent. He's not a threat, Elara, Sebastian said gently. He's nothing. He's an assistant manager at a rental car agency near the Phoenix airport. He's a man bound for the rest of his life by a single document, a consequence of the one and only time his mother tried to be clever. Elara stared out the window at the city that was now unequivocally hers. She thought of Marcus in the hospital, his face a mask of weakness. She thought of him in the lobby begging, and she felt nothing. He was a story that had ended, a prologue to her real life. I know, she said, echoing her last words to him. She stood up and put on her suit jacket. The CEO armor was back on, but only for a moment. The board meeting is over, Mr. Vance, she said, a rare, real smile touching her lips. Indeed, Ms. Vance Sterling, he replied. Good, because I'm late. She tapped her watch. Lily has baby Mozart in the park, and if I miss the Twinkle Twinkle finale again, her nanny Clara will have my head." Sebastian laughed. "The world's most powerful woman terrified of a neonatal nurse." "Clara is terrifying," Elara said, grabbing her bag. "She has standards." Elara walked out of the ether tower, not through the private garage, but through the main lobby. The life of a recluse was over. The press was always there, a small, semi-permanent cluster of paparazzi, but they were respectful now. They snapped photos of her, the CEO, the mother, the icon. She gave them a polite, firm nod. The car dropped her at the edge of Central Park. She walked onto the great lawn, and the entire world melted away. There on a blanket was her daughter, happily banging on a brightly colored toy piano. Lily looked up. Her face, a perfect miniature version of Elara's, split into a gigantic, drooling, joyful smile. "Mama!" But she shrieked, launching herself into an unsteady one-year-old's run across the grass. Elara scooped her up, burying her face in her daughter's hair, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo and sunshine. This was the asset. This was the bottom line. This was the entire company. The boardroom, the billions, the empire. They weren't the victory. They were just the fortress. They were the walls she had built to protect this single, perfect, giggling shareholder. "Hi, my sweet girl," Elara whispered, kissing Lily's head, as the one-year-old babbled about her music. "Did you have a good day? Did you sign all your contracts?" Lily just giggled and clapped her hands. Elara sat on the blanket, a billionaire, in a bespoke suit playing with a plastic toy. She had been handed a war in her most vulnerable moment, and she had responded by building an arsenal. She had been told she was nothing, and she had responded by becoming everything. She looked at her daughter, her future, and smiled. The fire was over. The phoenix had not just risen. She had landed. And she was home. That's the story of Elara Vance Sterling, a woman who was pushed to her absolute limit, only to find out she had no limits at all. She proved that the best revenge isn't just living well, it's building an empire. It's a reminder that a person's worth is never determined by those who try to tear them down, but by the strength they find to stand up. She was handed divorce papers when she should have been handed flowers, but she turned that betrayal into the fuel for a global movement. What did you think of Elara's ultimate revenge? Was she too harsh? Or did the Lockwoods get exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama, resilience, and sweet, sweet justice, make sure to hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs an empowerment boost, and subscribe to the channel. We have new stories just like this one dropping every week, and you don't want to miss what happens next.